Hello, my name is Trupti Mathur and I'm here to talk about my final term project for spring 2016 for the course EE278, and this project is basically a parameterizable LMS adaptive filter. Let's look at the overview of how I'm going to go about this presentation. First, we're going to look at an introduction, a description of the design, then we'll look at the simulation verification, and finally we'll look at a conclusion. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the aim of doing this project. The main aim was basically to create a design of the parameterized adaptive filter using an LMS algorithm for weight adaptation. Simulation is carried out and then the results are discussed. The abstract of this design is basically that we have a LMS module, FIR module, data memory and coefficient memory in the complete design. So now basically we have a motivation for doing this project. The simple thing that we are trying to do here is to gain a clean noise-free signal with configurable parameters, which helps in design reuse. Basically what we are trying to do here is, since an analog signal is composed of an infinite number of values to represent any data, but any system has a limited memory and bandwidth. So for this we need to convert the analog signals to a digital. When this process is carried out, the filter is a mandatory resource. A filter is basically a simple device which converts a noisy signal into a noise-free clean signal. So now let's look at two types of filters, which are fixed and adaptive filters. A fixed filter is something that requires a prior knowledge of signals and noise ratios. So it is possible to design this filter that passes frequencies contained in the signal but rejects the frequency band occupied by the noise. The next thing that we are basically trying to design here is an adaptive filter. Adaptive filter is basically one in which the attributes and other features are parameterizable and configurable. We can adjust them to suit our purposes. So for this, we don't need to have too much knowledge of the signal and noise characteristics. And the signal being narrowband and the noise being broadband, no prior information is also needed. So the next thing that we need to look at is the block diagram of this filter. In this, we have LMS block, FIR block, and a data memory and a coefficient memory. So basically, the data memory is implemented as a RAM block, and so is the coefficient memory. The circular buffer is used to implement the data memory, which improves the speed. The coefficient memory consists of a dual port memory. Also, there are two multipliers which can have any number of bit widths for the multiplier, multiplicand, and the product. The entire system also takes care of rounding and saturation. Now basically all these stages can be pipelined so that we have a better speed and a better overall performance. The next thing that we are going to look at is what an adaptive filter actually does. So in an adaptive filter, what we have is we have an input signal x of n, which is coming from any discrete source, and then we have another output signal which is received from the entire system after filtering, called y of n. Now there is also something called a desired response signal d of n, which is supplied to the weight adaptation, and an error signal called e of n is generated from this. How this adaptation filter works is a very simple process actually. There is a final output signal that is computed by multiplying a sample of the digital input signal x of n with the filter coefficients. Now this output is compared with the second signal called d of n by subtracting the two samples at a particular time n. This difference is known as the error signal. As the input, it is supplied to a process that changes the parameters of the filter over a time period n to n plus 1 in a specified manner. Now as this time increases, the output signal is expected to become a better match to the desired response through the adaptation process, and the magnitude of E of n is supposed to decrease over time. So now the adaptive algorithm, which is used to alter the parameters of the adaptive filter, defines how better the output signal matches the desired response. So the next thing that we have to look at is the LMS algorithm, which is pretty simple. We calculate something called the mean square error, and the flowchart can be shown to show this simple algorithm. What do we do in this is pretty much the same equations that we discussed earlier. Here the weights are calculated by changing the previous weight and this converging factor. It is a stochastic gradient descent method in which the filter is adapted only based on the error at that current time. The algorithm predicts the next tap value by adding a correction to the present tap value. This correction is what the MSE reduces. Now, if this gradient is positive, something needs to be subtracted from the tap value, and if the gradient is negative, something needs to be added to it. The next thing that we are going to look at is the functional block diagram. In this diagram, basically all the theory that we have presented before has been concisely drawn. So at the initial stages, we assume that all variables are considered to be 0. The input x of n is applied and the output y of n is observed. The error signal e of n is calculated by obtaining the difference between output y and the signal d. The error signal is multiplied with x of n and the step size. The weights are changed according to the product obtained. These weights are changed until the error approaches 0 or becomes fairly constant. At this instant, the output and the desired values are matched. The next thing that we have to see is what we have done to implement these tools. The tools that we have used are the ones prescribed for this course, which is MATLAB, and for simulation we have used Altera Quartus 2 with ModelSim. The next thing after this we have to do, we have to look at is the calculations that are basically done. So for this, what we do is we need to plot the signals with MATLAB, and inputs and the desired signal are filtered and generated in MATLAB. Then after this, the operations of the LMS algorithm and filtering takes place along with delayed inputs, which are multiplied with the coefficients and generated using LMS algorithm. For example, if you have a 4-tap filter, 4 inputs are multiplied along with coefficients to give the output, and all 4 outputs are added to give the valid output. Some of the calculations are looking like this. Now let's look at some of the simulation results from MATLAB. This is the input signal x of n. This is the desired signal d of n. And finally, when we get the error signal e of n, we notice that there is a point where it is becoming 0 and fairly remaining constant with very less variations. So this has been implemented using a Verilog code, and finally we implement the code in Quartus and use ModelSim to gain a graph that looks something like this. As we can see, clock underscore 62 and reset underscore 62 are the usual clock and reset. Then we have the input signal xin underscore 62. We have the desired response, desired underscore signal underscore 62. Then we have the error signal, error underscore signal underscore 62. That's about it for now. And this is the conclusion of this project. I have been able to gain a pretty good insight as to how an adaptive filter works. And we have seen that there might be a future scope of implementing NEOS 2 user interface and perform hardware implementation on the FPGA. So the output signals can be visualized, but however we might need to do digital to analog conversion. And also we must take care of floating point precision. So basically what we did here is that we minimized the mean square error, used the LMS algorithm to gain a better performance of the adaptive filter, and signal to noise ratios were added to a simple sinusoid wave and the results were tested. So that's about it. My name is Tripti Mathur. My student ID, etc. other information is on the screen. Thank you.